How's it, everybody? In lieu of a session this week, I have a special treat for you. We did a test stream with a few of our patrons, most specifically Grammar Paladin and Lucas Hill. Quick shout out to the two of you. If you like this sort of thing and you'd like to see some more of them in the future, we can very easily make that happen. So please let us know in the comments what your thoughts are. Enjoy the show.
So just to kind of tease you guys with what I'm working on, I have this idea that uses Pokemon that I am not super familiar with. I've used one of them in like competitive battling because I'm a monster. I used a Trevenant that would use Phantom Force harvesting citrus berries. But that gives me the idea of I want to build a faction that follows around our big bad and cleans up the corpses, because that's a lot of wasted parts, to put it as nastily as I can. And I want to use Trevenants for it. It's inspired by, and I'm not sure the scientific accuracy of this, I'd have to check with our resident scientist, Phoebe Wilhelm. But there's a post I read about the daddy longlegs spiders and how they will go outside of beehives, because when the bees die, they just place the carcasses outside, and then at nightfall, the daddy longleg spiders, they come and they collect the bodies and they take them away, presumably to be, eaten or repurposed. But what I'm thinking of is a little bit of that inspired by the Magic the Gathering setting that I ran a game in for just a little bit. Was never recorded or on camera or anything. But there's the guild in that plane called the Golgari that does exactly that. They collect the scum and waste and filth and they repurpose it. They use all the parts of the buffalo, so to speak. So I want to have a group that is kind of like that, but in the sort of historic Laris region, of Trevenants, and I think the other one I want to use is maybe Ninjasks, to have the Trevenants show up, collect all the bodies, strip them of anything that's not natural, which, as we've kind of seen in the campaign a little bit so far. Again, I'll try to keep the spoilers light, just in case, because I know it's a new campaign, and sometimes you don't really have 6 hours to throw at a D&D stream and just watch all that. But I want these guys to roll through after our big bad has decimated an area, collect all the bits that they can, and repurpose them. And I'm thinking this is going to be the origins of Paris, Parasect, Ninjasks, and a lot of ghost Pokemon as well, because I do need to have a way for those to come into being naturally. If the D&D setting prior to Source Stones didn't really have ghosts, I kind of need a way to explain that into being. Praise be the great symbiosis. Yes, Grammar Paladin. The big bad evil guy is a giant jellyfish, and its allies are a bunch of scum that butcher the bodies for the jellyfish. In return, the jellyfish sinks ships and can't poison the scum. Lovely. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking of trying to do. I love the symbiotic relationships that you can see in plants and animals in the real world, and I love twisting and distorting them into horrifying fantasy monsters with a Pokemon frame built around them. But what I want to do for these guys is I want them to be largely neutral. They don't necessarily care who wins in this big conflict between our big bad evil guy and his standing armies and the rest of the world. They really don't care who wins as long as the bodies keep showing up. So what I don't know is whether or not they will or even could be influenced to one side or the other. I'm not opposed to the idea of currying favor with the Harvestmen, or the Harvesters. I haven't really settled on a name. Harvestmen is the one that came to mind, but I also like to be a little more neutral in that regard, and they are not necessarily human, so why would they put Harvestmen at the end? So Harvesters, whatever this faction ends up really being called, I like the idea of this being the breeding ground for the fungus that eventually will become Paris and Parasect. Shout out to Nipsey. So, if we want to get started with that, what I'm looking for is their motivations. We know they're neutral, so their worldviews and standings. Oops, let's learn how to type here. They are a neutral group. They don't necessarily get involved in conflict. They are not fighters. Something that's alive is a lot more work for them to repurpose than something that's already been killed, especially if it's been mutilated. Those things have a lot of use. So I would imagine these guys probably go after those scarecrows that we've been popping. Let's see. Their motivations are to dead and dying from the purpose filth. So that's their main motivation. Keeping the grounds clean so that they can grow more trevenants and phantoms and such. I want them to have a clean place to live and grow. The downside to this is they are vulnerable to attacks, and that's where I think the ninjasks are going to come in. If we have them sort of in a symbiotic relationship there, I think those ninkatas are going to be the foundation of the Paris colonies in the future. And I'm not super dead set on that. That's something that just sort of came into being in the moment. But let's say the ninkatas follow trevenants around them from bug types and other parasites. In return, trevenants offer moving shelter and steady food supply. Okay, so we have our relationship. We have the ninkatas that follow the trevenants. The trevenants move around. Okay, we have the harvesters. Remind me of medieval camp followers who would follow armies until they kill each other during the end after they loot what they can, often executing knights trapped in mud. Camp followers are treated neutral because they're civilians who mix with both sides and camp separate from the army in order to not... Yeah, that's exactly what we want, Grammar Paladin. That is exactly the kind of historical accuracy that I am looking for. And that's exactly what we're looking for as well. That's good stuff. So the harvestmen, they're looking for dead and dying. They don't care about the healthy folks that are still marching about. That's way too much work. It's too dangerous. But the ninkatas can go around. They can feed on the folks who are still alive. The harvesters can load up the bodies, and away they go. But what I'm realizing in having this plan is we need a better way for the trevenants to get the bodies out of the fields. Because trevenant in my head is not necessarily strong enough to load up a whole bunch of bodies unless there's, hundreds of them. And I'm thinking more in the vein of maybe a few dozen of these trevenants, and during the daytime they probably would just appear to be a forest full of, cicadas that just scream. Much like the outside of our recording studio during the summer months. So the goal now is to figure out how these harvesters get the bodies out of the fields. So we need either a creature or a Pokemon or something in between that could move a large amount of bodies that would be easily manipulated, or also maybe another symbiotic relationship component. Because if we have the ninkatas that live within the trevenants and protect them from other parasites and bugs and maybe moss growth, let's see. So we need probably a large grass type who could move largely unseen and kind of blend in during the day, but could also serve as almost just like a wagon for bodies, like during the plagues. Remember, how about rooting fallen enemies and dragging them into open holes underground made of dirt using roots? That is nasty, and I love it. Okay, so root the fallen enemies, drag them into the open holes underground. Okay, so maybe we could even have something that can burrow as well. It might even just be the ninkatas. Maybe they burrow about, keep the bodies safe until someone can come pick them up. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Um, yeah, I'll do another mild spoiler warning. Just a heads up. The Zoroark folks that we have seen. There's been a lot of pretty blatant warnings for the players that they are just gnolls that I'm reskinning, just to keep everything easy and clear and out in the open. The Zoroarks that I'm using so far, when they desecrate a city, they'll take all of the iron and steel, anything that's not nailed down, anything that shines or could be useful, leather, stuff like that. They'll bring with them everything they're leaving behind. They usually burn. They make large piles of bodies, and if they don't set them ablaze, usually the survivors will, to just sort of honor the dead. But once that's left behind, you still have, a large pile of just charred bodies. So maybe those ninkatas are moving in first, finding these suitable bodies and reporting back to the Trevenants. They'll prepare this sort of mass grave of roots. And then what I'm thinking we have is those Trevenants just have those root systems kind of spread out, start dragging pieces back between them and the ninkatas. They put them in these mass grave sites. They kind of take root for a few days, weeks, however long it takes, and then they potentially could be producing more Trevenants out of this. It depends how far I want to lean into the Pokemon versus the standard D&D setting. If it's a standard D&D setting, I would just have them be reanimated as skeletons. But I think I like the idea of these Trevenants doing just sort of a mass conversion. So they're taking all those souls that are trapped in these burned bodies and just repurposing them as new haunted and living trees. And then just searching for purpose, they rejoin the harvesters. So maybe the harvesters are getting larger and larger with every city that gets ransacked or fight that breaks out. So maybe they might not be as neutral as I thought they were. Because it seems like it might be in their best interest to actually start a fight. Yeah, Grammar Paladin, welcome to the dark side of the mind. as we get a little further into the world building here. Yeah, I want this to be, because this the idea that I've got sort of floating around in the head, and timeline wise it doesn't necessarily make sense. I want this campaign to be the war that preceded the War of the Architects. It's been mentioned like once or twice in the main campaign, but it's so far back that it wouldn't necessarily influence anything. Lucas says, could use the mass graves as a birthing site with extra nutrients or fertilizer. Dead on, my friend. That's exactly what we want to do. So if they take all those bodies of the dead and dying, maybe anything that's unsuitable, they just turn into like mulch. It's pretty nasty. I've been rewatching Hannibal lately, and that's the episode I just watched. Oh. It's got all the fungus people. It's kind of gross, but that's also where gross. This is. It's really gross.
It's filthy gross.
Yeah, but Joel, that's what I want. You don't understand. Quiet, dude. That's what we want. I want. Yeah. That's what we're looking for. I'm thinking. Maybe I'll expand it to be more than just ninkatas. It'll just be ninkatas and Paris, because I like Paris. They're basically cordyceps. It's like The Last of Us. They'll be cultivating these bodies, and man, now I'm thinking about how I could use like living body parts, almost like zombified human remains, and then maybe those just coagulate with roots, and that's where you get Trevenant. And then over time, they're turning more and more into Just full-blown tree people. That's kind of nasty. It's really nasty. But I love it. So I think that's what we want. Okay, so I'm gonna call it recruitment because that's what I've been calling it for the other factions that I've been building. Um, mass graves from the battles and cities that are ransacked. Harvesters more neutral, they can suffer from the party they don't consume. Interesting. Okay, so we can get into that. To make them more neutral, they're suffering from the party they don't consume. Mass graves the battles and cities that are ransacked. Fertilize graves. Cultivated. Harvesters grow. Okay, so rather than recruitment as a normal faction would, the harvesters require bodies. So it could be something as simple as our big bad evil guy could care less what the harvesters are doing because they're not messing with his ranks. Lucas says, if the bodies have any markings like tattoos or birthmarks, maybe the Trevenant display those markings on their bark when bodies are consumed. That's dark and I love it. Okay, so then what we can have, that opens up a whole new can of worms, is if you have a friend of the party that gets killed and sort of left behind, put in one of these mass graves.
Someone that Pollen knows.
Exactly. Perhaps they're used. Trevenants are big pieces of walking wood that's already been uprooted, can make a lot of homes and weapons. And their wood is enhanced. After all, most Pokemon can easily destroy normal trees. You know what? I like that. Yeah. So maybe there's some kind of dark ritual. We can have, some kind of ritual of undeath maybe that they're performing. So you've got that hardened, knotted, petrified wood. Maybe it's tougher than most axes or hatchets could break down. And that also, you get the fear and the storytelling of just the general populations saying like, oh yeah, you better be careful or like the harvesters will come for you. Or maybe they know about these like large roaming petrified forests and they know not to go in there because people just sort of disappear when they get lost. Because if the forest around you is alive and it's always shifting, you don't have any landmarks or anything. You can't find your way out. This is coming along nicely. You guys have some great ideas. So tactics for them. We have, let's see, they are mobile but slow. Ambush and trickery or deception rather than a direct confrontation. Okay, so maybe both sides are aware that this petrified wood, if you could find a way to work it, would make for some very, very tough shields or even armor. And it could even be somewhat living, too. So if it's, chipped or damaged in a fight, maybe they can find a way to just regrow it. And it might even give you the opportunity to sort of parlay with the harvestmen. If they take you as one of their own, you could, kind of convince them, oh, hey, there's going to be a fight over here. And that could be a way to break the morale of the other side. If you know, because if you're sitting in sort of a bunker or a small town and you know an invasion is coming, and all of a sudden the harvesters, things of myth are, you can see them waiting on the other side with your enemy, just waiting for you to die, so that they can take you and twist you to their own vile purpose. That would be a great way to shake the resolve of untrained soldiers. So I really like that. That's brutal. So let's do effects on morale. It's probably very damaging untrained or undisciplined, because again, like if you can see what will happen if you fail in the coming fight, if you know that you're going to be basically harvested and turned into a walking haunted tree if you die, that's going to do one of two things. It's probably damaging to the untrained and highly motivational if you can hold your own. Because if you know that that's coming for you, you're going to fight a lot harder to stay alive if you've got that military training and background. You're probably going to be very shaken and scared if you're just, a farmer trying to defend your land. So, what I need to figure out is, let's get rid of that. So if it's highly motivational against, let's say not two. Give Trevenants the ability to grow temporary shields for themselves and allies resistant to many martial weapons but not actions. Yeah. Maybe towns have monuments to those taken by harvesters because they couldn't be given a proper burial. You know what? I really like both of those ideas. Both of you are very, very helpful with this. Okay, so let's say allied troops gain a resistance to, let's say, piercing and bludgeoning damage. Because that could be a big swing. But gain a vulnerability. I might extend that to Radiant as well if I want to lean into the fact that these are, haunted ground. So if you had Paladin or something similar that could bless the ground, maybe those harvesters aren't allowed to enter your space. But that's time spent consecrating a city that's not spent fortifying it against an actual threat. So we'll say their weaknesses. We'll be a little redundant here. The weaknesses are slashing damage, fire, consecrated grounds. So I think with that is if something is given, let's be kinder here. If someone is given a proper and consecrated burial, the harvestmen are unable or unwilling to desecrate that grave. And that might even be the leftover humanity that's still ticking around up there. Maybe it's a little bit stronger than the fungus and the haunted wood drive to expand. They remember what it was to be human just enough that they won't desecrate those graves. So if we have the ability to grow temporary shields for themselves, resistant to most martial weapons but not axes, I kind of like that better than just the broad slashing damage. So let's say axes and similar weapons. Okay, so maybe normal hatchets and such are too weak to break through, but if you had like a battle axe, you're still going to be cracking and splintering these harvestmen. They're also quite slow, but I'm picturing them almost as a dumbed down Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy. You know how he's got those, he can sort of shoot out the roots and they don't overplay the strength of that. Maybe it takes them a lot of energy to really go to war. So they would have the ability to take down living and healthy hosts, but it would take a lot of energy from them to do it. So if we give them a weakness to, large axes, fire, and consecrated grounds. I feel like that's enough drawbacks for them. We've got, let's see, we've got about 3 weaknesses and about 3 bonuses. So they have an incredible swing on morale, both for and against. And they would also have the vulnerabilities to fire as a nice trade-off. I do like my factions to be not all good and not all bad. So all it would really take is a few people who have survived a Harvestman raid to know, okay, if you have fire, if you have priests or paladins with you, consecrate the grounds, light your weapons ablaze if possible. All right, grammar. This adds meaning to things like Dia de los Muertos, sacrifices to the dead. Perhaps the Trevenants would be upset if such things don't happen or if the bodies are desecrated. Maybe they get a buff for that and go into a rage. I like that. So let's get into their special abilities and actions. I keep double capitalizing things. Okay. Special abilities and actions. So let's say Harvestmen. Ooh, there we go again. Harvestmen. Let's say harvesters. Okay, let's go with harvesters. Harvesters can be kept away, or let's see, how do I want to say this? This is where, oh, Grammar Paladin, I need your grammar abilities. Harvesters can be kept away, or you can earn favor with them. So they can be kept away or appeased. There we go. Let's go with that word. By proper burials and offerings to the dead. And that might be why they are all of a sudden so prominent. If we've got large-scale battles happening all across the Laris region, the amount of improperly buried dead and lack of funerals and such. Yeah, appeased. Grammar Paladin, we're on the same page here. Harvesters can be kept away or appeased by proper burials and offerings to the dead. But with the wars going on, it's entirely possible that most, if not all, of the fallen do not get proper burials or offerings, and that's why these harvesters are so prominent now. And that's why maybe that's what their motivations are too. We go up to motivations to give a proper send-off to all casualties of the large-scale conflicts. Okay, so maybe there is still a solid amount of morality in there, and that's what's keeping them neutral. Is that last bit of humanity that they're holding on to. They're probably still fully aware of their actions. They might even still be alive sometimes. And there's just various levels of decay. So they can be kept away and appeased by proper burials and offerings to the dead. They become enraged by grievous acts. Okay, so this is going to be an interesting point of conflict between them and our large army of gnolls. Our big bad evil, he is capable of recruiting standing armies just as much as the players will be. And this will offer a unique and interesting, hopefully, trade-off for everybody. If you leave a city or a battle and you leave all these bodies here, and the harvestmen find out that you could have given them a proper burial, it's likely they'll come after you. And our big bad evil guy also loves to use gnolls as kind of a shock troop. They move in, they don't experience that fear. I keep saying gnolls. Substitute Zoroarks for gnolls. These Zoroark groups that move in, they're just shock troops. They go in, they brutalize anything they can capture. They do not take any prisoners. That is their trade-off there. If you send human troops in when the standing armies or guards surrender in a city, Everyone else is either, enslaved, taken prisoner, anything like that, but they're not killed, and they're certainly not brutalized. And that goes the same for any of the guards and soldiers. They might get forced into service or also sent away to those prison spaces, but they're definitely not just going to be killed on the spot. They're useful. You don't want to be wasting able bodies. But the Zoroark gnolls aren't capable of making that connection. So it's possible that the harvesters have a very powerful hatred for these Zoroark groups. And it might even be the case that they don't try to convert those Zoroarks. It's possible they would just sprout them into large trees. Maybe the Zoroark bodies are the fertilizer that they use for their bodies that they're converting into trevenants. Maybe that's part of the ritual. Taking something that is so against their worldviews and converting it into something useful. That seems very much up their alley. Yeah, Lucas, I do think the harvesters would be nocturnal. It's likely during the day they'll probably just blend in, kind of plant some roots, photosynthesize, do the things that normal plants would be doing, and also just go largely unnoticed. Because if they're moving during the day, it's a lot easier to obviously wage war during the day. So bolder groups might head in if they could see these harvesters working just to get rid of them. Because humans do love to destroy things they don't understand. So it's possible if they were to move during the day that they would be met with fire and axes. Just to try. Just to see what they could get through. So I like the idea that they're nocturnal, and that's where those Ninkatas come in. Is they're active during the daytime. They can act as scouts. They can sort of communicate with each other using those cicada traits that they have, that humming and buzzing, communicating to one another. And then the Paris groups that follow them around can kind of encourage healthy growth on them while they're planted. So maybe they're even leaving lush trails behind them everywhere they go, fertilizing normal plant growth. And also maybe leaving behind little fungal spores to make more Paris in the future. So I kind of like the idea that the Trevenants are active at night and the Ninkatas and the Paris are active in the daytime. And maybe that's where that symbiosis really, really comes in. So let's see. I don't know how much more we need ability-wise for the Harvesters. They seem... That is true, Grammar Paladin. Yes, they could be protecting those spores. So maybe what we have is maybe the Harvesters are able to just enhance the defensive measures and capabilities of any of the plants around them, specifically those fungal spores that are being planted. And that could also encourage, maybe there's some sort of disease that follows the Harvesters everywhere that they go, to sort of start to break down any humans that move into an area. So if they're traveling through a forest, maybe they're planting harmful mushrooms. Could be something as simple as that. So let's see. I'm liking the progress though. These guys are turning out a lot cooler than I had them in my head. This is exciting. Okay, let's see.
Maybe, I don't know, are you thinking about doing 2 of these today or just the 1?
Factions?
Yeah.
Seeing how it goes.
Okay.
The Harvesters came along a lot quicker than I thought they would.
I was thinking if you did one that was like Patreon focused, then you could open up to others if you want in our Discord for a separate one.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. Okay.
all a test anyways.
It is a test, indeed. Okay. Yeah, Lucas, do you think any natural phenomenon makes them stronger at night or during a specific season? Maybe they're, I'm not too up to date on, like, lunar cycles, but, I mean, the obvious connection would be, like, under a harvest moon. I would have to figure out what that actually is and means, because I tend to just say nonsense in my DMing style. But yeah, Grammar, I do think fall is probably when they are the most active. I think winter they probably would fall dormant, They might even freeze over entirely. Spring seems too full of life for them to be really, really prominent, but I definitely think late summer and fall is probably when they're fully active. So maybe that might work as well, because fall tends to be when I start my D&D campaigns. So maybe Ragnarok is in, the throes of fall, and that's where these guys are coming from. But yeah, maybe Moonlight is where they're getting their drive. So maybe there's some forgotten moon god or goddess that's kind of powering them up as well, because that is not off the table. Having an actual deity that could be encouraging this kind of rebirth and recycling. It's a very aggressive recycling service, as we'll say. Yeah, grammar, like a full-on moon god. I'm in. Let's see. Yeah, I'm liking our progress here, and I'm not saying we have to be. We do have a legendary. Yes, there is indeed a legendary. I believe. Are you talking about? It's Lunala, right? The moon one. Solgaleo and Lunala. I haven't played Sun and Moon in a long time, but yeah. Okay. Yeah, you know what? Let's get weird with it. Religious affiliation. Lunala. Okay. Yeah, so at night maybe Lunala is sort of protecting them, as it were. And given that this is still D&D, you could, in theory, fight, and kill the moon god for whatever that would do for you. Just send the world into further turmoil, because why not?
I'd be interested to discuss, like, Pokemon gods in general with Source Stones, because if maybe is this a new development, or is Lunala from beforehand?
The before four times.
Yeah, the historical lore of...
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, these sentences are the most I've ever thought about the gods of Pokemon in the setting. But yeah, it would explain the radiant damage boost. Yeah. Yeah, so maybe the harvesters are... Yeah, maybe they're almost literally a direct translation of just the undead. And some of them are more willing than others. And it might have something to do with how long they've been converted. Because I'm sure this will inevitably lead to the question of, could you cure someone who's been taken by the harvesters if they weren't dead? Because I like the idea that they take the dead and the dying. They take the useful pieces and they turn the rest into fertilizer or food for the Paris and the Nincatas. But if they are followers of Lunala, that would explain also why they can't move during the day. Maybe she's the one that gives them life each night, and maybe in the daytimes they are literally just an inanimate forest of petrified trees. So they just take root wherever they were when the sun comes up. Almost like Tolkien's trolls, where when the sun rises they get turned to stone. Maybe that's their trade-off. Because that opens up the question of, if the harvesters follow Lunala, what are Lunala's goals? That would be another thing to figure out. And it might just be to keep the to keep the land clean, make sure everything stays orderly, encourage natural growth. But I like that. Great job, both of you. That was an interesting train of thought there. If they take the dying, how long do they need to do their business? The players may need to stage a rescue operation. Lucas? Oh, I love it. I love that idea. Yeah, maybe that might even be how the players encounter the harvesters the first time. Is maybe some of their wounded get, basically abducted. They just disappear in the night. That would be an interesting way for them to see the harvesters. It would also give us a way to encourage an interaction. for better or worse. Maybe better and worse. Oh yeah. No, that's why I didn't tell any of the players other than Joel because he has to know. Because I'm in his home right now, so he has to know. But
I can hear that you're talking, but I can't hear what you're talking. So I'm playing.
yeah, perfect. Yeah, he's distracted enough. So yeah, that'll just be between uh, the few of us. I like that. Um, ooh, yeah, that's spicy. I like that. Okay. So let's table the harvesters for a moment. And now that we've kind of seen what we're looking for, let's build another faction. Yeah. See how this goes. This one we can do literally anything. I am open to suggestion. Um, my my goal for a faction is basically the information that we have on the harvesters now. Um, what do they do? A little bit of their mechanics, a lot of bit of their lore. Um, bearing in mind these may or may not show up. It does depend on the player's interest in them. At the end of the day, if I put the harvesters in front of them and they go, okay, cool, that's lame. They're weak to fire. I throw a fireball at them and explode them. Then sad day for that group of harvesters. Um, but is there anything that you guys have been wanting to see in even the main game that hasn't really popped up? Um, it can be a deity, the followers of a deity, anything like that. 'Cause I'm happy to dive into those things. Also, if you guys just have questions on the main game, if I can answer them, I'm happy to kick you a little bit of info. I'll try to keep it spoiler free or spoiler light if possible. Ooh, something vampirous and dexterous. Okay. Yeah, I do love the idea of implementing something like the Curse of Strahd, having a sort of vampire lord. Uh, makes me sad that there's not like a blood type for Pokemon. That would be exciting. There's plenty of bats. I have used the Zubat swarms before. Could be um, like a Robin Hood and the Merry Men type deal. Big group of archers and rogues and kind of a thieves guild type deal. And maybe they're working towards some sort of nefarious vampiric purpose. Maybe they bring something back to a large creature or demon or something like that that has some root in the Pokemon world. I am not opposed to that in the slightest. Let's go down a little bit. Let's get a little more design space. Rick Dexterous. Okay. Let's see if we like. Someone is consciously trying to balance. One wins. Autocorrect strikes again, Grammar. It always hits you at the worst times. let's see if we have. Trying to keep the balance between both parties, never letting one win, so it could pose for an interesting team up with the bad guy. I like that. Maybe it's it almost would function like a thieves guild. So they want to obviously they want to steal and manipulate things in such a way that gives them power. But part of the power that they're holding is the natural state of the world. So they don't want the quote unquote good guys to be doing too well, because then they'll have too much power and they'll start cracking down on the Thieves Guild. But they don't want the bad guy to fully win, because that takes away their power as well. If there's no city structures or even like small town groups, yeah, like a roguish mercenaries. I like that. Yeah. So they just move in and they want to take root, because obviously every good D&D setting has to have the sort of thieves guilds. I love Matt Colville's ideas of that, of giving them mundane names like the road or the clock. That's always been a big inspiration for my thieves guilds. That way, it gives the players the opportunity to encounter someone saying like, "Oh yeah, no, the clock is always ticking, but it never tells time." That's one of my biggest inspirations for the thieves guild. So I love roguish mercenaries. So maybe if you come to them with enough money, they'll kind of help you gain information and maybe even turn the tide. That gives the opportunity to unplug your headphones with your leg every time. Ah. Yeah. So okay. So we can get a clock is always ticking. Get it with rocket fuel. Yeah, yeah. Let's see. So if we have a roguish mercenary group, they are. Maybe Ko has heard of them since he has been a thief. I really like that, Lucas. That's good. That's good. Okay, so maybe Ko used to run with these guys. Or at least had run-ins with them. Okay, so Ko has, and yeah, Lucas, I'm with you on the spelling of Ko. I always just put Ko. I have no idea. That's up to Joel. Okay, so if we have the roguish mercenaries, oopsie daisy, they are present in most towns and cities, not so much in smaller villages. Okay. Yeah, so if we have them present in most towns and cities, and Ko is familiar with them, definitely should make the players wonder if this group is going to be nice or naughty for the current interaction. You know what? This actually works out relatively well with something that I can't really discuss yet, for fear of spoilers. But this is gonna work out. This is gonna make an encounter that has already happened make more sense retroactively, and I'm for it. So if we put them present in most towns and cities, and they don't know, and the players really don't know if they can trust them, because it's really just how much money or influence or power or treasure or whatever motivates them that you can throw their way to see if they'll sort of reciprocate for you. So we'll put them in most of the towns and cities, not so much in the smaller places, no villages or anything. But anywhere that's got an economy. So port cities are a big one. This also offers a tie-in. Maybe Perseus has run in with these guys as well. With Perseus having once been he's sort of a reformed Pokemon hunter. catching, killing, selling bits and pieces of rare Pokemon, maybe these guys have a solid trade in that as well. Creatures of the deep would fetch a fine price for, you know, eccentric nobles that want something. Um, so Perseus may have some insight here. I think what I like with that is giving the players multiple narrative threads to pull on. So if they don't realize that Ko could know it, then maybe Perseus can have a bit of a way in there as well. Perhaps they also hunt the Trevenants. You know what? I kind of like that. If they are sort of roguish and ranger-esque, then traveling at night and on and off the roads would make sense. Maybe if they work almost like bandits do as well and they ambush caravans, it would make sense that they would have to post up off the road. Maybe those harvestmen are sort of lying in wait for them. So they might have some insight into the harvesters. That could tie them back in as well. Okay, so let's see. If they're hunting the Trevenants, they have run-ins with the harvesters. Okay, yeah. You can use, yeah, gives money a new use to hire them. Exactly, yeah. So if the big bad evil guy applies enough leverage, obviously, like, hey, I'll kill you if you don't help me, they might be inclined to do that. But that also offers up the opportunity. If you have enough money, they might just betray whoever they're working for, and that goes both ways. If another group says, "Hey, it's in your best interest to take these people out. Here's double what they're paying you." Double crossing is probably not out of these guys' wheelhouse. Trevenants can be hired. Will likely betray anyone for the right price. Yeah, so it's probably safe to say these guys have little to no sense of honor. They probably just do not care. If there's money in it for them, they'll go for it. Okay, let's think on this for a sec. I'm gonna take a quick fiver. Be right back. Gonna get some more water. Use the facilities, and I'll be back with you guys in just a moment. Okay, we're back. There we are. Okay, what did we miss here? We have a paladin with run-ins with a kid who might be invested in joining the merry band of inglorious men. I like it, Grammar. Could make use of a steal skill that Pokemon have where they can take items mid-combat. You know what? That might be an interesting character arc for Ko. Because that's in direct conflict with his new steely physique. Stack that down a little bit. Okay, so tried to get recruited. Ooh. Manatees have an idea ball. Weird reference for you. Tried to get recruited with acquiring part of the steel stone. Okay. Okay. That gives us an interesting toolbox to use. So if Ko has run-ins with these guys and wants to get recruited, they give him an impossible task. They figure if he pulls it off, great, let him in, and we get this incredibly valuable gem. And if he fails, whatever, he's not associated with us. So, I like that, and I'm being very careful here. I want to make sure it's not too on the nose, but I do like the tie-in to the player characters. And that gives Ko a nice little character arc there. If that's his goal, that's why he's so against talking about what he was doing and why he wanted what he got. Okay, cool. There's a little nugget that we might get to use. Take from that what you will. Let's see. These guys. To disarm. Generally steal from them. Okay, cool. So they probably would run with, obviously the first thing that pops in my head is Sneasels, but in the interest of being new and more exciting than just using something that we have already used, let's think about that for a minute. Who uses like thief and steal style moves? Who's sneaking around? I kind of like maybe Sable Eyes. Popping through walls, they're obsessed with gems. I could see where some roguish mercenaries would be very interested in befriending Sable Eyes. Okay, so then what we need to figure out is, let's see, what did they? Yeah, definitely grammar. Their eyes are indeed literal gems. Okay. So we have a recruitment method for these guys. They propose difficult or impossible. If someone succeeds, they join, and the group gets some grand new addition to their wealth. If they fail, there is nothing. Would be thief guild. They are on their own. Okay, so that's how we recruit. So, Lucas says, do they have a sort of uniform or identifiable markings, like rings or matching tattoos, like the main story gym leaders? You know what? I like that idea. Something very discreet that only the guild or someone aware of them would know. Open the gate at night. It's guarded. Note being spotted. Okay. So maybe each of the guild members has a Sableye partner, in addition to whatever else they might have. Let's see. Okay, so we know how they recruit. Their affiliations, we'll deal with abilities. Okay, identification. Okay. So let's figure it out, Lucas. Do they have a uniform or an identifiable marking? Something small like a ring might be nice, and it might even be like understated. Maybe it's a dirty, unpolished ring. It might be ill-fitting, not too ostentatious to aspire other thieves to steal it, but it's kind of one of those things that it would be easy to recognize if you know what you're looking for. But otherwise, it's going to fly completely under the radar. It's an unpolished bronze ring. No one's going to be looking at you. Are these guys the precursors to Team Rocket in some way? You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking they might be the precursors to the privateers. If they're on the side interested in the Pokemon hunting trade, and they're great thieves, but they don't like any other big affiliation, but they're definitely not afraid to get their hands dirty, or like murder is on the table for them, then absolutely they could be. That gives you the opportunity. They can have that anchor symbol flying about. They could be the precursors to the privateers. Maybe it looks a little different. Is it Delmise, the new one? That's the anchor Pokemon that's covered in barnacles and stuff like that. Because I'm thinking that might be an interesting way to get these guys on the sea, and that gives Perseus a way to know who they are. But I'd have to look up. I'm not too familiar with what Delmise does. So let's see if there's any sort of tasty lore bits out there about our guy Delmise here. This is, of course, only if we want to tie them into the privateers. We don't necessarily have to. Not everything has to be tied into the main campaign, but it could be very exciting to try. Don't need to mark them, but they can have a code word in Thieves' Cant in a language only they know. Yeah, or even like maybe it's something they do while they're talking. Maybe it's almost like sign language. Delmise sinks ships. Is that real? Oh my word. That's terrifying. It catches large whalelords and drains their life forces. That's terrifying. Delmise just eats whalelords and sinks ships. That's insane. You have to give them something for safe passage. All right, we're definitely gonna circle back to Delmise. Delmise is really cool. I'm gonna throw Delmise in here. I'll deal with that. That's really, really neat. Okay. Yeah, Grammar. That's regular Pokemon. That's the Sword and Shield dex entries for these guys. After lowering its anchor, it waits for its prey. It catches large whalelord and drains their life force. Don't ask me how. This guy's a ghost grass anchor, and all of a sudden it's eating whalelords. That's terrifying. I'm also just now realizing this thing is grass. I always thought it was steel type because it's an anchor. Had no idea.
Its ability makes it get stabbed from steel moves.
Oh, is that why? Okay. That's crazy. Okay. Anyways, back to the task at hand. I'm using Delmise for something. That's too scary. That's too scary. Maybe there's a ghost ship out there or something that uses a Delmise as its anchor. Like a Davy Jones style guy. But for now, we have the Thieves Guild group. Okay, so they are affiliations with thieves, murderers, rangers, and rogues. All kinds of ne'er-do-wells would seek to meet up with these guys. So maybe they're like maybe they're a thieves guild, an assassins guild, all kind of rolled into one. These guys deal in blood, coin, treasure, gems, all kinds of things. And maybe there's four. It's got a steel move called Anchor Shot that keeps a Pokemon from escaping. God, yeah, I'm definitely gonna be working on a. Maybe that's another faction we can do. We'll see. We'll see where the day takes us. Kind of Davy Jones-esque dude. Uses a Delmise to skewer prey and sink ships. Man, some kind of pirate crew. All right, I like that. Man, that's exciting. Who knew Delmise was so boosted? It's terrifying. Okay, so I like the idea that this group right here, our vampire faction that we're working with, maybe there's four main pillars of it, and maybe there's even more. Who knows? But maybe the thieves group works with the Sableyes. No, they don't like to get their hands dirty. Maybe that's a different group here. Maybe there's like a Zangoose or something along those lines, like a Zangoose that works with the murderer groups. And maybe we have a Seviper somewhere else, and maybe right now they're buddies. And this could be what sparks off that hatred between those two as well. If we have Sableyes, Zangoose, or Seviper as the murderers, maybe it's both. The Rangers could be, obviously, like Decidueye is a bit on the nose there. It's just an owl that's a ranger. But that could be a reason for conflict, or even that specific group could even end up working with the harvesters in rare situations. I mean, it is, grass ghost, I believe. Could make sense. So we have that. I'll throw that in there. We'll see where that goes. We might delete that. I don't know. We're gonna spell it like that for now. We'll come back to the spelling later. Okay, so we have these guys. So the abilities would depend on which part of the faction that you interact with. So it's likely our gem thief would have been after the Sableyes and thieves section of the group. Thieves can be tasked acquiring information. Maybe they do a lot of like blackmail, bribery, extortion, and general acquisition of wealth. So if we offer suitable trade or amount of gold, the thieves will and can keep their hands and their employers Racketeering. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, Grammar. I'm thinking the Sableye section of this guild is very good at a lot of different criminal enterprises, but maybe they're not so good at killing. So if you want somebody assassinated, maybe that's where the sort of murderous group comes in. So if we have some assassins that are working with these guys, let's see, who would be the assassins though? I kind of like the idea of using like Seviper Venom as a way to kill. Sort of clean and discreet, but it's also their snake oil. Sableye perhaps cast Nightmare to give the scared condition and could sell nightmare-free potions. Interesting. Yeah, I like that. They can use Nightmare and just haunt somebody for a few weeks to stalk their marks, really get in their heads. Wow. That's dark. I love it. Snake oils. Yeah. Okay. And torment and haunt a mark for days or weeks. Make them paranoid or easily subdued. That could make them very, very good at like blackmail and extortion. Is if they can just get in your head and convince you that they've already got some sort of dirt on you. Like Scarecrow Toxin from Batman. Yes, Lucas. Yes, very, very good. Use their nightmare abilities. Fear toxins. Yeah, I like that. I like that a whole awful lot. So maybe then what we have is their weakness or their drawback is these guys, or at least this subset. Keep it open here just in case. Maybe the thieves will not kill. And if a member breaks this rule, they are removed from the guild. Maybe they even frame you too. If you fail at a job, these guys, maybe they just plant evidence on you and turn you in. Keeps the local police and guards and stuff off your tail if you just occasionally kick them somebody who's done something terrible. Let's see. Okay, but let's see. Let's see if we can't tie it back and get that vampiric element in there as well. Maybe the guild leader's a Gengar. And he's feeding off fear. Let's see. Like if he uses it, there's a lot of different angles we could have. If there's a Gengar or similar guild leader, then maybe there's a guild leader. Ooh, we could pump it up. Perhaps they need to fuel their Pokemon with fear and blood, or need blood to begin tracking and haunting people. That would be an interesting way. If you want them to extort or steal from something, maybe they need blood to track them. I like that, Grammar. That's good. Maybe we can go bigger than a Gengar as the guild leader. Make it something like homebrew item you can find on them or use to evolve their Pokemon could be a Bloodstone. Ooh, I like that. Yeah. Okay, so if they have a bloodstone on them, let's play with that for a sec. If they have a bloodstone on them, that might be how you can identify and find them. And maybe what they do is that's how they can prove to you that the job was done. Is they maybe what they're while they're haunting you, they're just extracting your fear. I don't know. There's something there, but I can't quite figure out what to do with it. But I really like that idea. We have bloodstones. I like that. I like that a lot. Okay. Okay, so let's say fear extraction. And remove allied unit's fear of an enemy. Preventing morale from dropping. Let's say decreasing. So preventing morale from decreasing. Okay. So to put it in a more recent example, if you've got an untrained group of like farmer soldiers, basically a militia from a town, and they know that the Zoroarks are on the horizon and they've allied with the harvesters. So the Zoroarks have made some sort of deal. Said, okay, we won't desecrate the graves so that you can move in and claim all those bodies, and in return, you're going to give us your boosts. So rather than having half of your militia run and scatter and be much less effective because their morale's down, you go acquire a bloodstone in some manner, and you cut a deal with this guild, and they remove that fear of the harvesters. All of a sudden, that downside's no longer there. Your guys have no fear, their morale can't be decreased, and they're going to fight at full strength to the last man. That might give you the advantage that you need to turn the tide. You could also send them in against an enemy force. What their fears. So you can learn what their fears or weaknesses are. So that would, yeah, exactly, Grammar. That makes them attractive to the good guys and the bad guys alike. You can get on these guys' good side for even just a little bit. Your soldiers will fight harder, and you can also kind of haunt the enemy force and figure out what their fears are, and obviously they'll be probably afraid of what their weakness is, and that gives you a way to tie it in mechanically. If you know what someone's afraid of, the odds are pretty good you can sort of scatter their troops, make them fight a lot less effectively. So if you use these on the harvesters and you know that they're afraid of fire, all of a sudden you trade in those pitchforks for torches, and you move on in, and now those guys are fighting at a disadvantage against you. They're more likely to scatter or flee, and then anybody who remains won't have the benefits that they were getting from that faction. I like that. That's nice. So let's get rid of Scream's illusion magic too. Yeah, it does. I like that. Okay. These guys would use illusion magic. Okay, so these guys probably have a pretty strong tie with either the ghost source stone or just ghosts in general. As the ghosts would be very good at infiltrating dreams, extracting fear. Maybe there's like a Cophagrigus or something in here somewhere too. That could be an interesting route to go down. Because if you have a Cophagrigus, they could basically take What's a counter? Something like Bird Box, where if you blind yourself, they cannot gather your fear or cast fear on you. You're absolutely right, Lucas. We need some kind of way to defend yourself. So let's delete this. This is sort of becoming something more than just a basic Thieves Guild. That might just be a part of their racket. I mean, if you can infiltrate someone's brain, obviously you know where they keep all their valuables. So maybe the theft is a byproduct. So obviously we can't have the counter just be you're not afraid of anything, because that's unrealistic. Everybody's going to be afraid of something. So we need some kind of way to counteract an enemy that can extract your thoughts. Obviously, the Harry Potter tie-in is chocolate bars and spectral deer, but we need something a little more grounded in the Pokeverse. So a drawback to these guys might be... It's almost like Inception. You have to train your brain to know when you're being invaded. We need something a little more accessible than Leonardo DiCaprio. So a weakness or a drawback to these guys. Maybe it only works if the target is asleep. Holy symbols, circles of faith. I like that. Similar to the harvesters, they would be unable to enter consecrated grounds. So anywhere under the protection of one of the Pokemon gods would be off limits. So a temple to Solgaleo or Lunala would be unreachable to these guys. Any priest, maybe if you're traveling with someone who is affiliated with a holy group, they could sort of consecrate the ground around you, or if they're on watch, maybe they can basically perform an exorcism, get rid of the thing that's sort of haunting you, and keep it from coming back. So religious affinities keep the thought vampires away. Yeah, this one is a lot harder, but there's a lot more. I feel like it's evolving as we go. So, I definitely want to do something with the Bloodstones. The guild leader may or may not be a Darkrai, and I may or may not give Darkrai some kind of deified status. Maybe it's a demigod of some kind, and it's able to interact a little more easily with the other folks in the world. So the identification for these guys, maybe anybody associated with this group, part of the trade-off to this is you're prevented from getting a full rest. Maybe just the nature of these individuals is if you're nearby the things that are extracting fear from your enemies, there's got to be some kind of power bleed that's going to affect you. So maybe they lose some benefit of resting. So maybe part of their identification is they've got, dark circles under the eyes. Maybe they're easier to approach, but it's the things you can't see that you should be more worried about. That could be what the Bloodstones are too. So maybe if you have a Bloodstone, you've proven yourself valuable to this guild. Yeah, Lucas, I like that. You get no bonus from... Oh, Grammar, it's all good. Thanks for hanging out for a while. It's been a good time. Allied troops cannot gain benefits. long rests. Okay. It's alright, I feel like we've made some pretty good progress here. We might wrap it up soon anyway. I feel like this has been a pretty good test stream for now. Not opposed to doing some more of these in the future. I feel like this was a very productive hour and a half or so. So we'll get this wrapping up and we'll be on our way here. So the identification for these guys. Bloodstone amulets. Other trinkets. Dark circles under the eyes. Tell you what, why don't we table these guys for now? We'll take some time to think about it, and then maybe we'll work out another stream time in the near future. But I wanna thank both of you for hanging out with me as long as you did. I feel like we got some really good progress. Hopefully you guys had a good time. And we'll see about doing this some more often now that we know how to get a stream up and running. And then maybe next time we'll pitch it to the whole Discord so we can get some more folks in here. I just wanted to give you guys a chance to pop in and hang out for a while. But before I forget, let's get this saved up as a test stream notepad. Why not? Let's make it as clear as possible. Alrighty guys, let's get this wrapped up. Thank you all for hanging out. I'll still be in the Discord if you have any other further ideas, but for now I will wrap up the stream and give Joel his bandwidth back. But toodaloo. Thank you for chilling with me. That was a good time. Alright. I will catch you guys on the other side. Stay safe, have fun. Toodaloo.